Okay, right. Well, thank you very much for taking part in this workshop today. To those of you who has come. So my name is Noriko. To those people who don't know me, I've recently completed my PhD. My research was around the topic of artist books and social art practice. Lesia, do you want to speak a little bit about yourself? Oh,
You're muted, Lesia.
muted.
Whoop. Hello, I'm Lesia, and I'm doing a PhD at the University of Southampton. Megan's one of my supervisors, actually, and I'm focusing on computer-generated novels and paratext, so the things that I found around a text, and how people read them. So, very excited for this, of course.
Yep. Okay, right. So the aim of the workshop today, which is titled Exploring Being Human Through Collaborative Computer-Generated Novel Workshop, it's about creating a 50,000 word mashup style computer-generated novel and collaboratively. And that collaborative element is quite an important aspect, I think, of the workshop. And by doing so, we hope to engage in a critical discussion about this, the generated novel form, which for me is quite a new thing to explore. And if Lesia hadn't asked me to do this workshop with her, I probably wouldn't have known anything about it. So, through this workshop, we would like to reflect on the questions which arise from working and creating with others, others in terms of human beings and also with the machine. And in particular, to explore the post-human dimensions in these questions. And we hope that, this will enable us to question ideas of humanness in relation to the festival theme of being human as praxis. So we have asked, the participants or people who have signed up to take part in this workshop to select and prepare texts that resonated with you under the theme of being human. So thank you very much. I understand that everybody here, like attending today, has submitted a text of their choice. And, we hope that by experiencing the process of creating a computer-generated novel, in the discussion that follows later on, we hope that we can reflect on questions around, for instance, like the relationship between the author and tools. Does the relationship change when we use a machine to mediate writing, or can we still call this writing, or does it become something else? And also around the culture or practice of reading. What is practice of reading, and actually, are we reading? So these are some of the interesting questions that we hope that will, come up through this workshop. And also as I mentioned earlier on about the important element of collaboration. We hope that by kind of working collaboratively or like collectively in order to create this computer generated novel, maybe we can start to reflect on notions of creativity and authorship as well. Yeah. So the resulting 50,000 words computer generated novel, what we plan to do is to submit it to NaNoGenMo, which is the National Novel Generation Month. And Leslie might be able to like explain it a little bit more later on. But it's their 2020 challenge. And I guess I suppose it's okay to say, Leslie, isn't it, to say that everybody, the names will be listed as collaborating authors in this, making of this computer-generated novel. And again, if you don't want to be mentioned, just let us know. Or if you want to use a pseudonym or a pen name, that's equally fine as well. Just let us know by email or writing in the chat on the side. Okay. If is any questions or is it okay for me to carry on? Yeah. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Then like the brief outline of today's workshop. So like we will start the workshop by maybe like asking everybody to share like which text you have chosen and why, like why it resonated to you, in terms of under the theme of being human. And then actually this information will be brought together to form the introduction. We'll collate it and then I can make it into an introduction for the resulting generated novel. Then Lesia will share the computer code and explain to everyone what is happening behind the scenes when we say the computer is processing the text. Okay, so you can see, the behind the scene, like what's happening, what is the computer doing? Yeah, and then also like Lesia has produced 3 different versions of the mashup novel already, and this is really to save time, like and also and yeah, so yeah, to save time, isn't it? And
Yeah.
do you want to add
And
anything?
yeah, so sometimes it might take a couple minutes to generate a text. These have been pretty fast so far. If we have time left over at the end of the workshop and you'd like to see how the computer can spit out a generated text, that's fine by me. So we'll see if we have time for that. Also, if you are deeply unhappy with the versions that we're looking at and we have time, we can tweak things around a bit and see if we can generate something you're happier with.
So again, this is something that it was quite new to me, that the fact of this element of curation, perhaps, like that you can curate this computer, because I'm quite scared of computers, and I thought like computer is like this almighty thing. And when Alicia explained to me that no, you can tweak it around and you can actually curate, that was for me like was quite an interesting element of this computer generated novel. Okay, so then like these 3 different versions, we're going to share it with you, and then and hope that well, no, and then what we're going to do is we're going to spend a bit of time reading these different versions and read in these kind of inverted commas, because reading a computer generated novel is a very, well, I think it's a very different experience to say a kind of a conventional, like way of reading text. And then after spending a little bit of time reading these different versions, what we want to do is to vote using the very nifty polling facility that this Blackboard Collaborate offers, and then to choose a final version to submit to the NaNoGenMo 2020. Okay, and then at the end of the workshop, I think because it's a very small number, I think we will be able to put together an author statement that details like what we tried to achieve and how, and then and that again will be added to the generated novel. So the whole of the workshop, yeah. So the whole of the workshop, yeah.
Sorry.
No.
Just want to say the smaller workshop size than we were expecting is actually great, because that means we can all spend a lot of time explaining why we selected our text, and we can spend more time reading and selecting bits we like, don't like, and more time sort of crafting the kind of author statement and the things we would like to say about the novel when we post it online. So I'm looking forward to that, to spending enough time on this. So
Yeah.
good.
No, it'd be really good. Yeah. And then the workshop is scheduled to go on for an hour and 15 minutes. We hope you can stay to the end. But if you have to go for whatever reason, we will email the link to the submitted novel, so that you can the novel that we're going to submit to NaNoGenMo, so that you will be able to access the final outcome and read the generated novel. Okay, so yeah, read, yeah, very much so, yeah. So are there any questions about the aim, or the what's going to happen during the workshop, or any questions?
Sounds like we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Okay.
saw Claire switch on a mic.
Yeah, I know, that's I noticed that too, Claire. Is there any?
Only when I'm
sorry,
actually
wasn't
questions for me. I was just unmuting to say that all sounds clear to me.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks.
All right, thank you then. So then perhaps like maybe we can start. We're dead on time actually. Maybe we can share like which text we have chosen and why. Yeah. Maybe I can start. Should I start? Okay. Right. So I chose The Wizard of Oz. Yeah. Written by L. Frank Baum. I'm sure like everybody's familiar with the text. And the reason I chose because I was actually inspired by something that Lesia said to me. And oh, okay, right. Okay. Yeah, okay. And then yeah, so like we were attending a workshop and in the context of social robotics and and Lesia was telling me that it's always about interactive robots and things. And then she commented to me that often in this kind of like in the context of social robotics, the Wizard of Oz behind the curtain controlling the machine is not talked about enough. And I thought, that's quite interesting, because for me, like computer is such a scary thing. But then you kind of forget that there's actually a very big sort of existence of this human being behind the computers. So I thought that was quite interesting, and I also think that the characters in Wizard of Oz, like all of them, really are so human in many ways. They're characters with lots of flaws and weaknesses and whatever, but it also reflects on like friendship and compassion and empathy and all that. So like I thought, oh yeah, for me, I thought it resonated very nicely with the theme of being human. Yeah. So then
I think what you were referring to is called the man behind the curtain method, or I don't know if it's a method or something, where it will appear that a robot is, performing and interacting with you of its own accord, but really behind a curtain there's somebody with a keyboard typing out what they're supposed to be saying. Just like in The Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. So then maybe we'll take turns and like so on my screen actually I can see Bonnie. Bonnie, would you like to tell us like I understand that you submitted a number of texts. Thank you very much. From like extracts from like different sources. So maybe you can just tell us very briefly like what were your thoughts behind your selection?
I decided that first of all, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I decided that I was going to look at humanity as the good, the bad, and the ugly, because that's what we are. We have good points, we have bad points, and I also like to look at humanity with spontaneity and serendipity. So what I did is I asked each of my family members for a word, and I put it into the search menu, and then I looked and I decided to go with more obscure works rather than the popular ones. So I would look to see how many times the work had been downloaded, and then I would ask them for a number to determine if it was a higher number download of the grouping or a lower number, because some had only been downloaded 1 or 2 times and some had been downloaded like 40, 50, or 60 times. And then I looked at the works and then I read through the works and picked out passages that had to deal with humanity, the emotions that people went through, and different things. One text was Curiosities of Olden Times by Baring Gould, which my mother picked out, and that had to do, surprisingly enough, with mourning. And that was ironic because my mom is still in mourning for when my dad passed.
Right.
So that's where I came up with the concept of serendipity. She's still in mourning for when my dad passed over 8 years ago, and that was just something that she picked up. Another one was The Outlaw, a story of Iceland. My stepson picked the word sword, and this is what came up, and it's another story by Baring Gould, and it talked about brotherhood and everything.
Wow, I
The
really like the algorithmic and human approach you have there. You're like mixing human serendipity and creativity with an algorithmic approach of following the rules of I type the word into Gutenberg, Project Gutenberg. I look for a title and it has to be the least downloaded one. That's very cool. Thank you.
No, I think so too. Yeah.
The next one I picked was Darkness and Dawn, or Scenes in the Days of Nero, a historic tale by Ferrer. And that was about Caesar Nero. And that just covers every range of thing that you can possibly think about humanity because it was Nero.
Yeah.
That was definitely the good, the bad, the ugly, and anything and everything in between. And I just picked that because that covered everything. I picked that one. The next one was The Ocean Wireless Boys on the Atlantic, which was by Goldfrapp, and that was the word tank. And that has to...
What was the word? Sorry, Bonnie. Was it take?
Tank. Tank.
Okay.
The next one is Independent Bohemia, and that's because one of our nationality backgrounds, ethnic roots was Czechoslovakian. So they decided, let's do some background into our family history, and they're like, that's really boring after I pulled the text, and I was like, well, history can be boring sometimes. It's not all fun and games. But it also showed that the country, and they referred to a lot of the people and what happened and perseverance.
Cool.
The next one, Ancient Legends, Mystic Charms, and Superstitions of Ireland by Wilde. And
Sounds good.
This one, I love this one. This one talks about how people believe in faith and religion and their heart, and they look into everything. So that went in there. My daughter picked that one. And then my other son picked Agrarian Empire Story by Wilson, based off of the game how do you pronounce it? Terraria. Thank you. He's in the room. And that talked about how in the game and everything that they can sit there and play the game and still bring in human emotion while playing the game and their characters. And the person who played the game wrote a story about her character and seeing human emotion and seeing how different people played the game and lived and still brought in the human emotion with the different generations and societies that she encountered.
Cool.
And that's
nice.
all
I
of
think
them.
that's. Sorry. Yeah, I think that was all of them. I remember. Wow, that's great. Thank you so much for combing through and picking those out.
Yeah, really interesting and really fascinating to hear. It's so much thought and like has gone into the the selection process. So thank you very much. It's really fascinating. Okay. So okay then Claire, you're next. You're next to Bonnie on my screen.
That seems like a good reason. I'm going to just plug in my headphones in case it's
Okay.
echoing.
Okay now?
Yeah,
Do you
I
hear
think
me
so.
okay?
Okay. Yeah. That's
perfect.
fine.
Okay, grand. I don't know if I have quite such an exciting process, but I'll tell you what happened. I think I may have missed an email, so I only sort of saw the reminder email about selecting a text yesterday. But I landed on Hamlet, and actually thinking, and at the time it was I was trawling, and it's just one of those creative things where it just popped into my head, and I was like, I think this is what I want. So this may be a post hoc justification, but I have a couple thoughts on Hamlet and why Hamlet. So one is about 2020. So for me, Hamlet is, and this is not controversial, very much about madness, is about humanity, it's about being stuck in one place and overthinking, and that feels like 2020 to me. So it felt topical in a certain sense. I think also though maybe there was a little bit of a slight scholarly reference going on here as well. In fact, there definitely is a scholarly reference. There's a really good book called Hamlet on the Holodeck. It's from the 1990s, the late 1990s, by Janet Murray. And I wasn't consciously referencing it, but I really adore that book, and it was really influential for me. And I'm pretty sure this is a call out to Janet Murray's Hamlet on the Holodeck as well, which, although it is old, remains a solid book. So those are the two reasons why I've brought Hamlet today.
Brilliant.
Wow, fantastic.
Wow, fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Then Adam?
Hello, sorry, baby was being... so I picked two. I don't think I've successfully put as much thought into it as the other participants, but, and again, it might be post hoc justifications. So I went for Rousseau, the second discourse, so it's Discourse on the Origin of Inequality, which I will admit I haven't reread since I was a first year, and I had overestimated how readable it was. I was trying to pick something that was, you know, relatively meaty but still readable, and I thought Jean-Jacques won't let me down. But having looked back at it, I think Jean-Jacques did let me down a little bit. I've left in his absolutely servile dedication to the Republic of Geneva, because I think that's an important part of the story. I winced a few times at the mention of the word savages in there. I'd forgotten that. And the other one I picked was Arthur Conan Doyle's The Final Problem, in which he attempted to banish Sherlock Holmes from his life by having him thrown off a waterfall, unsuccessfully as it turns out. And again, this is the post hoc bit. The way they map together is that in some sense Rousseau is trying to puzzle out on a kind of global or general level how humans came to be what they are, in the bad sense. He blames dancing in part, which I think I've got a lot of sympathy for that. Whereas Arthur Conan Doyle is doing something that's very, very personal and trying to bring an end to something. And both of them are about, in a way, the works of humans overcoming them and turning against them. So in Rousseau's case, it's at the social level where we end up with all this bitterness and horribleness, because we are envious of people who dance better or whatever. And in Doyle's case, he just wants to be left the hell alone and write whatever it is he wants to write, and possibly babble on about how there are fairies down the bottom of the garden. So those are the two I picked, and hopefully they haven't, Rousseau particularly, mangled up the way this is going to read in the end. So yeah, that's my contribution. That's my fault.
Brilliant.
Well, just to lower any expectations now while I can, no matter what text you picked, it probably wouldn't be described as being terribly readable anyway, and that's part of its charm, so no problems there with Rousseau. Hello, PJ. I think we have somebody who just joined us. Hi there. We were just introducing which texts people have selected, cleaned, and submitted to us. And I'm just going to introduce the text that I contributed to generate this novel. Then I will walk everyone through the code that I created, borrowed, reworked, whatever, to generate the novel. And then we will look at three versions, which was three versions of our possible novel, which was generated by the code. And then we'll take some time to read it and vote on which one we would like to use. And we'll also discuss the generated text, such as which sections of the text did we find very interesting? Did it have an interesting use of language or imagery? Is there something that we found quite distasteful and we definitely don't want to use? Or maybe we didn't like any of it at all and we don't want to, and we demand to have a new one generated, but we shall see. So the text which I contributed is H.G. Wells' novella The Time Machine. I think that's what it's called. Yes, The Time Machine. Originally, I wanted to contribute other sort of older sci-fi works which I love, such as Isaac Asimov's I, Robot, and I think it's Forster's The Machine Stops, because I think that's quite relevant to now. Unfortunately, they're not out of copyright, or they're at least not on Project Gutenberg. So I went to H.G. Wells' The Time Machine because while it's not really necessarily great in today's context with what we would expect from a book in terms of, you know, equality and all that good stuff, it does it's one of the oldest books I know within the sci-fi genre which imagine the future of humanity, and it imagines the future of humanity as a devolution. And it's one where, rather that, you know, humans have sort of conquered the earth and completely sort of ruined it, and like thrown the earth into a devastating state, it's kind of gone the other way around, where humans have devolved and the earth has kind of grown and flourished around them and kind of completely ignored them, which I thought was quite interesting. So that's my contribution there.
Thank you. Thank you, Licia. No, everybody's story is so interesting. It's so insightful, really. And then again, like, you know, the consideration that went into to selecting, you know, choosing a text. There's so many to choose from on Project Gutenberg. So no, that's been really insightful. Little stories, yeah. So Lesia, would you like to share the computer programming code then, and show us like what is happening behind the scenes?
Sure. I'll just check real quick. PJ, are you on board with what's going on, or do we need to answer any questions?
Oh. Maybe you need to unmute yourself, PJ. Oh.
Okay, well, maybe you don't have any questions. If you do, just feel free to type into the chat. If you can't, then just turn on your mic and let us know. We'll get you up to date. So, yeah. So I'll share my screen. Share application screen. Oh. I need to switch. This is very annoying. I need to log out really quick and switch to Chrome. So I'll be back in just a moment. Very sorry about this. Blackboard Collaborate won't let me share my screen on Firefox, I believe.
I had to go on Chrome as well earlier on.
Back soon. Sorry about this.
See you shortly.
Yes, goodbye.
Well, I'm sure Licia will be back very shortly. But in the meantime, is there any questions about Yes, thank you, Adam. Yeah, Adam has just commented, computers already betraying us. Yeah, Noriko was right to worry about them. Yeah, I think, like, you know, I mean, for somebody like me, I just think, I don't know, there's this kind of fear, not fear, but like, you know, that this computer is this thing that I really don't have much control over. But I think, you know, how Lesia was explaining to me that even the programming code too, like, it is created by the human being, and then that sort of, you know, without this command, that, you know, they won't but you know, there is command that the human beings create this command, and the computer just kind of like well, they sort of respond. And I know that there's, you know, the AI and all. Again, I don't know very much about it, but like, you know, you can train the computers to do things. But like robots, but just kind of that idea of that that actually, you know, it's not about like losing control over the computers, but there has to be this sort of like more like interactive or like a kind of reciprocal sort of relationship, you know, with the machine and the human being. And for me, like doing this workshop and also like, you know, getting familiar you know, with the hang on a second. Okay, let's just have difficulty connecting, Megan.
Difficulty connecting with Chrome?
Yeah, she said that she says she's the only one in the room or something. Is
I
she
think
gone?
she must be using the test link.
Surprise! I'm
here
here now.
Oh, great, she's joined. Okay, thank
Sorry.
you, Megan.
Computers. All right, so I'll just hop in to where I was. So sorry about that, everyone.
No, it's all right. I'm glad you're back.
I will now share my screen again. This is very 2020, isn't it? Having to deal with software issues. Here we go. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Fabulous. All right, so here is the code that we have used to generate our novel. And by generate our novel, I mean of course, more than one version. We can generate endless versions here. If we would like to generate 200 versions of a 50,000 word novel right off the bat, we can. If we want to do that to 1 million, we can, except it will probably take a lot more computing time, and I don't know how long 1 million would take. A few hours, few days, maybe more. Anyway, what I have done is, just to save some time during the workshop, I have generated about 12 different versions and curate, and for you I've picked out sort of the best ones, the more interesting ones, the top 3 most interesting ones, and these are the ones which I am sharing today. Of course, I can generate more versions if we would like. So because of the constraints of the workshop, there has been some curation going on. So the way this code starts is here in this section, I start off by sort of by importing code from elsewhere. So that means that I'm borrowing code that people have already previously made, so that I don't have to start from scratch. You'll see here where it says import Markovify. Markovify is the name of the generator which we use to generate our text. It's very simple. The effect looks as if you've fed it in a bunch of texts, which is the text which we've selected, and it sort of appears to sort of mash the text together and then spits it out for you. Hence why the type of novel that we're creating today is called a mashup novel. It just looks like all the words were put in a bowl, mashed together, and then maybe spread out over the page. And this brings us some fun use of languages, some fun use of creative language, popping characters into texts from other books, and it really shakes things up, kind of like a remix in a way. There are, of course, more complex styles of generated novels, but for this workshop, we're just keeping it simple so we can all see what's going on a lot easier. So the first step is that I got all of our texts and I put them in this folder here. So all the texts that you so nicely cleaned and processed, thank you, I found here. And what the code does is that I've written a function here which goes to that folder where all our texts are and opens each text. It opens each document and gets out the text, scrapes it out, shall we say, and puts it into a corpus. So one large document full of all our texts in one document. I then train the Markov model, the Markovify generator on it. So this text generation model works by parsing the text and learning, shall we say. Of course, learning may not be the best term here because it's not, you know, a human learning, but we can say that it looks at the statistical patterns within each text. So it's going to be a bit different for each text. Of course, the Shakespearean English is going to have different statistical patterns in it than a much more modern text. But anyway, it reads all these statistical patterns in and then reproduces the same patterns again on the other side, hence we get our output. So to us, it will appear like mashed up random text, but to a machine, it just looks like a statistical pattern. So after feeding the corpus into the model, it gets trained. In this code here, I decide to build a table of contents because we want our text to resemble some familiar things that we are used to seeing in books. I then write some code which I've named the novel generator. What this does is it uses the model that we trained to generate a certain number of sentences. And here I can, you know, tell the code to generate a certain number of sentences. I also want to split the text up into paragraphs and chapters, so it's a little bit more familiar for us, a little bit easier to read, because we need some help as humans, right? So here I have just decided on the fly that I guess a paragraph is about 6 sentences long, and I can plug that in here, and I decided, well, how long is a chapter? Let's say about 20 paragraphs long. Obviously, this is something you can tweak whenever you like. This code here generates the text and sticks each sentence that we're generating together to a big chunk. And then it writes it to a file for us, to a TXT file, and outputs it. And we can see the outputs here. I've converted our TXT outputs into a PDF so that we can share it on Blackboard, collaborate, and take a quick look at our text. This also includes a little feature where, because the aim is to create a novel of 50,000 words or more, where I've created this little function so we can count the number of words in the novel. So when you open the text that I've shared, it will tell you how many words roughly are in the generated text you are reading. So we're going to move on to reading the text. I'll just open a little example here so you can see what I'm talking about. Here is one of them. So as you can see, it's a very basic frame for what we will eventually put into like an ebook form, shall we say. So as you can see, maybe the first sentence could be a little readable. But as we move on through the sentences, it starts to kind of fall apart in terms of semantic coherence. So actually, we can't really read a generated novel like you would a typical novel, where everything makes sense and you can keep up in your head with what's going on. One way that the best way to read has been described as reading snack-sized portions, where you kind of want to comb through the text with the idea of looking through the interesting needle in the messy haystack and find sections of text which are intriguing or interesting, ridiculous. For example, here, the old instinctive dread of something after death and danger of war. Like, okay, it's kind of interesting. So we can go through here and find sections that we find interesting. And you don't have to read it linearly at all. You can skip around to different sections or to the very end and find something that catches your eye, that interests you. So, of course, as far as reading goes, you don't have to read the whole page or anything. You can read the first 200 words, the first 100 words, 500 words if you like, the first paragraph, whatever you feel like. There aren't actually any rules yet or conventions on how to read, so do what feels right, I guess. Probably none of it will feel right, but there we go. Are there any questions?
Please take note that this what Lesia has created in terms of the generated novel. Not well, I shouldn't say Lesia has created. Lesia has made the computer process the novel, I guess, or yeah. But anyhow, it's not hasn't been put into a book form yet. So like that's why you might think, oh, why does all the chapters, the chapter headings don't have a proper heading on it or whatever. But yeah, all that will be formatted later on to look like a proper book. Like so this is the example that Lesia is like sharing with us on the screen.
Here's an example of how the finished generated text will look once we've decided on our version that we're submitting. So here I'm using something called LaTeX to mark up instructions for how the novel should be generated. For example, here we have an instruction that says, at this point in the document, print the author. I've added myself here, and at this point in the document, print the title. So if I double click on the title here, we see that it refers to this section. So you see that from this markup, we can essentially generate a document, which here on the right looks a bit more like the book that we're used to. So we have kind of a crisper looking table of contents and pages with proper numbering. So that's what our final piece will look like. Thanks for reminding me about that, Narika.
Oh, no problem at all. And that was a novel that Lesia and I ran a workshop with the WSA Winchester School of Art postgrad students, and that was a novel that was generated from that particular workshop. Yeah. So should we spend maybe about 10 minutes then reading through the 3 different versions of the generated novel, and then we can like we can talk around it, we can have some discussion around the generated text. That be okay?
Yeah. We have a quick question here from Adam, who asks, is the making nice via LaTeX going to be automated in the Python script? So the Python script is the code that I shared, and indeed, it is possible to automate the building, shall we say, of the book form within the Python code. I'm just still working on it. So I'm kind of halfway there. I just haven't finished it yet. So yes, LaTeX is something that you can do by hand and that you can automate. Alrighty, so as far as the texts go, are we all able to access the 3 versions which I've uploaded?
Oh, where did you upload it?
It should be in a share file section. So if you look at the bottom of your screen to the right, you have the chat icon, the attendees icon, and next to it there should be a shared files icon. Everyone is saying nothing is shared. Okay, that's fine.
Let's see now. I got it. You have to click on this. Oh,
I can also put them in a Drive folder. So I'll just. Nothing is so okay. Megan, are you able to direct people towards the downloads, or in the meantime, I will make a Google Drive download link.
Yeah, so you should all have access to the files, but if you don't, I think then just a Google Drive link would be handy. I can share them quick on the screen, or I can share the first one so that you guys can have a look at it. Yeah, so you should be able to zoom in on this. you should be able to scroll through this. So just have a look at this while I see I get the others into the Dropbox.
Alrighty, so here I have a link that I'm sharing in the chat to the Google Drive where the 3 PDF versions of the generated text are held. Please let me know if it works and if you can view each one. And thank you for putting up with our technical glitches. So in the Drive link, okay, great. Thanks, Claire. Awesome.
We'll spend about 10 minutes, so maybe just after 3, we'll you can turn the camera off and the microphone off, like for the next 10 minutes, and then maybe if you can come back just to this, just after 3 o'clock, that would be great, and then we can start the discussion. Yeah. Right. Is how is everybody getting on? We spent about 10 minutes roughly. Hope everybody had a chance to look through all of the three different versions. I thought they were really fantastic, all of them in different ways. So yeah, it's just like a really I don't know, like a informal discussion really. Yeah, yeah. About, like, maybe what you thought about the resulting text. Did you think it was there was a finished text, is it a creative text, or like any thoughts on human creativity or like machine creativity, thoughts around, is it a human author text or is it a machine author text? What the thoughts about maybe the experience of reading, or like, the practice of reading, or how you read. I certainly thought, like, you can't really apply kind of a normal reading, I suppose, in something like this, because yeah, it's just such a different style of a genre of text altogether. So yeah, any thoughts from reading? Yes, Lesia.
I have something to add. Funny you say you can't read it normally. You can. It just takes a lot of brain power. So for my master's project, what I did is I decided to close read 13 generated novels. So I decided to slowly, close read and analyze words and sentences of 1,000-word samples of each novel, and I managed to do it, and I ended up being really tired afterwards. Trying to keep up with what was going on in the generated text used a lot more brain power than I'm used to. So that was an interesting effect for me, I think. I don't think everyone would call that interesting, but how did people's reading experience go when they were reading these novels? Did you find it easy or difficult?
Yep, please, just you can raise your hand to comment, or just put your microphone. It's such a small group. Just put your microphone back on, and then just please, contribute in the discussion.
I found it relatively easy to read, but then again, I think it's because I have a background as an educator. So I just went through and I read it, and I just found it absolutely hilarious, and I just couldn't stop laughing as I was going through and just reading it, and I was like, oh my God, that's just so funny, and I just started chuckling, and I just wanted to keep reading it. I was like, no, I have to go to the next version so that way I can get a sampling of all of them done. And it was just, they're just hilarious to go through and to see what's going on, and to see the different texts mashed up with the different characters and going, oh my goodness. And then, like, the machine is putting things in his mouth, and the machine apologizing for things like what Adam quoted there, and then to see other characters doing something that's not normal for them to do. And there were things, there was something, Dorothy did something that Nero had said, and I was like, oh my goodness, that's just so funny. So I enjoyed it.
Okay.
And to me, it was rather easy.
You said you were an educator, and therefore you felt that the texts were easier for you to read. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? What do you mean by that?
Well, I taught for over 15 years, and I taught 7th graders in the States through 12th graders. So I've taught basically what would be around text from about a 5th grade reading level through college level, plus their own handwriting, their writing levels. So watching it being mashed together, some of it is more, the higher levels of the reading levels, and then some of the computer generated levels were lower. So to me, it just mashed together, and I didn't have a problem, switching back and forth.
Right.
That's really interesting.
Because I noticed that, some of it was, okay, that's a more complicated level of reading, and then others it was, okay, that's, a lower level of reading that you normally wouldn't get when you're reading a regular novel. A regular novel, they try to write at one grade level. So that way
Yeah.
your reader is like a 10th grade level. They'll try to keep it at that 1 grade level. In the computer generated, since we're pulling text from so many different sources, it goes back and forth of readability, and then you're mashing it, so then the readability is completely skewed. So you may have part of one paragraph that is, say, an 8th grade readability, and then the bottom half might be college level. So your readers are going to be like, oh, this is really easy, and then all of a sudden be hit with something, whoa, what?
Yeah.
But because I taught such a wide range of students myself, it was easy to go back and forth because I taught at a private school for a while. So I would teach 7th grade 1 hour, the next hour I was teaching 12th grade, the next hour I'd be at 8th grade, and then I'd be at 11th grade. So I'd bounce back and forth all day. So to me, my brain was already trained to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Interesting.
That's
Thank
really
you.
interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting that yeah, that your kind of, your personal experience of like being an educator sort of like how like supported you, not assisted you in like this the reading experience. Yeah. Yes.
Claire, did you have something you wanted to say?
I had a couple thoughts. Yeah, I will say the time flew by. That was a very fast 10 minutes. So it's a while since I haven't really read computer generated text in this sense before. I spent time exploring non-linear hypertext and stuff like that. Something I noticed in terms of the structure was my eye, because I was obviously skimming here. I noticed I was definitely reading much more the starts of paragraphs, looking for the juicy nuggets of stuff that would grab me. And occasionally I'd glance at the end of paragraphs, and my eye didn't want to bother staying long enough to go into the middle of a whole paragraph. So I think there's a lot I missed. And a similar thing to a lesser extent was I was kind of skimming. The way I skimmed through the entire of each PDF was I spent a bunch of time at the start and maybe a tiny bit in the middle and a little bit at the end. So sort of something about where my focus was in the structure of that text. And the other thing that struck me was it came up in the little chat, which I really enjoyed the flow of chat where people were posting the nuggets that they were finding. But something that struck me was this weird confluence of kind of Hamlet and The Wizard of Oz and H.G. Wells, where there was this Shakespearean language about the witch with a capital W, and then about the time machine, and I'm like, ooh. So yeah, I really, I got a lot out of that.
Really interesting, yeah.
Leslie, you're muted.
You're muted, Lesia.
Sorry, I keep doing that. Claire, so what you're saying is because the text was structured structured into paragraphs, which is kind of more familiar to us, you felt that sort of helped you be able to read it, or do you think that you would have been able to do it if it was just one block of text?
I think I would have done worse if it was one block of text, but I think that structure of the paragraphs definitely affected what I was paying most attention to. I'm sure if you'd had some eye tracking software, you would have seen that I was typically reading 1 or 2 lines at the top of each paragraph and then just skimming to some other part of it. So I think it just affected where my attention lay. But it also did make it much easier to engage with the text. Like a whole block would have felt quite intimidating.
So here's a question for everyone. Do we feel that borrowing this structure of paragraphs and chapters from conventional novels, is that the right shape or structure, shall we say, for generated novels? Or do you feel that maybe there's another structure out there which could better support you reading or skimming, whatever you want to call it? Or are you quite happy with the way it is now? Oh, we can think about that. I see that Adam has a hand up. So yeah.
I think I'm in love with the book. Danger is part of the old lady. Beautiful. I think, yeah, the paragraphs, because we're so used to them, really trick you into, right, this stuff belongs together. This stuff right here, your brain has to make sense of as a unit. Is there a way to train the Markov visor to recognize paragraph breaks? Because they're just carriage returns, right?
What do you mean by, do you mean recognize them in the original text?
Yeah. So if it recognizes them in the original text so that it has a token which is paragraph break, it could throw into the mix.
That depends on how it's processing the text under the hood, which we can go on GitHub in a bit and take a look at if we really want to. So that depends if it's taking in our corpus of texts and you know, cutting off all the carriage returns, or whether it's using that as part of its statistical pattern thing. The thing is, I think it probably gets rid of it because the text, when it's printed, it comes out, the Markov generator spits out, shall we say, it per sentence. So there probably is a way to ask for it to spit out paragraphs based on what it judges is a paragraph based on, you know, statistically speaking, we should probably have a paragraph coming about here. But that's a little bit more sophisticated. So it can be done. I don't think that's how the one we're using has been set up. There's a lot you can do, of course. And if any of you have gone on to NaNoGenMo before the workshop and looked into some of the novels that people posted there, you will see a wider range of genres and methods for creating these. Claire, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just had a thought. I didn't want to immediately dive in when you asked about the structure of the texts because I'd just done a bunch of talking. But when you mentioned about paragraphs, so I definitely agree with Adam about the paragraphs are almost kind of misleading in this context. Not to say bad. And just a thought that strikes me is I wonder what links might look like in this context and how that might flow.
Links?
As in hyperlinks, so
okay.
you generate, you know. I don't know what that would look like, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, you know, if you want to come up with like a corpus of links to feed into the generator, then we can find out. You probably don't have a list right now. But yeah, again, so the only thing that the generator is doing is looking at less statistical patterns there. So probably they will all end in, they will all start with, you know, HTTPS : because
yeah,
that's quite, you know, a set in stone pattern, and probably a lot of them will end in .com. But yeah, who knows? It would be kind of fun if it generated something that we ended up being able to click on, which is
yeah. Yeah, I wonder as well about links within the text itself, so as in local links rather than ones that are outward. But I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. But yeah, that's what I was thinking anyway. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. That well.
PJ has commented. He says it kind of reads like poetry too, like the arrangements of the sentence content is about layers of meaning. Like, you know, I sort of think paragraphs that the chunks, it kind of like acts as like a visual aid. So like rather than the content, I sort of, you know, I kind of share, you know, what PJ's saying too, like that. It sort of like reads like a poem, that it becomes like layers, like almost like these different, like I'm not trying to make sense of like what it's saying, you know, almost like a linear format of reading, but then it's kind of like it's kind of a different sort of visual experience, like altogether. The other thing is that I don't know if like people have noticed, but the third version that Lesia had uploaded is cuts the Wizard of Oz text in half. So like I don't know if you noticed that the first two versions there was quite a lot of reference to like Wizard of Oz. You know, maybe kind of tainting the sort of the reading. It's kind of, you know, there's a lot more of the Wizard of Oz in the text, but Yeah, in the third version, actually, because it's such a long book, what Lesia had programmed was to use only half of the of the Wizard of Oz, so that it balances out more evenly. So the I don't know if anybody has like actually noticed that, like when you were reading it.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. Thanks, Noriko. So version 3 for me looks like it has more Shakespearean language going on in there, just because I reduced the amount of text coming in from the Wizard of Oz. Was that a comment from Claire?
The title of the PDF was different. That kind of gives it away.
Oh, yes, exactly.
Except that I misunderstood. I actually thought it meant that it was 50% Wizard of Oz input, not less. So I thought it meant there was more Wizard of Oz and not less. But I didn't.
Yes,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
So, no, don't be sorry. It's just really interesting. It's all good.
Yeah. So yeah, it's almost in a way maybe like mixing chemicals where, you know, you have to get the quantities right, or more of this is going to make it, or whatever. So what I have here, we're running slightly over time, so I guess we'll start to wrap up. What I'm going to do now is I had a poll ready and now it's gone. I'm going to share a poll here with each of the 3 versions, and you can all vote on the version that you would like to have as our final novel to be shared on NaNoGenMo.
Great, thank you, Lesia.
And while we're thinking about that, do we feel that this text, which we're about to choose, is it a creative text, would you say, or not really? No wrong answers here.
It's not a trick question.
So I
I
guess
think Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's creativity everywhere, and that writing code itself is a creative act, and the output is based on a statistical model, but that model comes from creative text of other people. So I would absolutely say this is a creative text.
Would you say that anyone else can jump in here as well, that we were being creative as a group, or is it located in the machine or somewhere in between?
It's a little of everything, right? We are bringing our own creativity, but we're very on the shoulders of giants as well here.
That's true. We did rip off a whole bunch of other novels just now.
I think we should credit ourselves collectively.
Does that include the machine as a author, or just us?
I mean, just us, because we don't want to have to pay the damn thing royalties further down the road when.
Right, when you know, when the singularity happens, and it's going to be like, hey, you guys didn't share your royalties with me, took advantage of my in advanced state. So PJ commented here that we should, I guess, think of the computer as a tool rather than as a collaborator. You could also create a novel writing on a computer. You wouldn't credit it then. That's true. And if we go a little further back, I guess people don't credit their typewriters before computers for composing their work. Of course, I think there's some room for debate here. So I'm going to show the responses of the poll. I think we can see this. Out of the 3... Oh, Megan said that Douglas Adams did credit his Mac. So there you go. So it looks like, let's see, we've had 4 votes. So that's
Adam has thanked his printer in his PhD acknowledgements.
Contributed a lot more than most people.
I guess I should thank my spell checker, because that's pulling a lot of weight in my writing. So it looks like version 2 is the one that has been chosen. So one last thing we definitely need to do before we go is to think of a title for our version 2 novel. You can do this by thinking it up right now, whatever you like. We can call it Being Human if you're not feeling terribly creative right now. Or you can go into the text real quick and find some phrases in there that you think would make an appropriate title. So, PJ, is this your vote for the title, The Year 2020? That could work. Great.
Ooh.
So, do we have any other suggestions for a title, or are we happy with The Year 2020?
Yeah.
Oh, Adam, that was a title. Now oil the joints of my hand.
Give me a minute so that way I can think.
Okay, sure. Oh, right. Adam's could be a
The
subtitle. We can
subtitle.
have a title, colon,
Yeah.
and then something picked from the text.
The main title is The Year 2020, and the subtitle is Now Oil the Joints of My Hand. At that moment that there is no love.
Ugh. Yes. We could have a very long title, that's true.
Oh yeah, true, yes.
So
who is okay.
So what we will do is we'll keep in mind everything that everyone has said during the discussion and when they were presenting the text which they chose, and we will put together an author statement to include on NaNoGenMo explaining why we chose the texts we did. We'll send it around to everyone so you can check it out. And if you really don't like something, then we can change it and discuss that. And then we'll post it on NaNoGenMo sometime this week, I hope. And then we'll send that around to everyone.
Bonnie has also commented 2020, Darkness and Dawn, Being Human.
Cool. So
I
would just quickly copy these into another poll and we can pick the one we like. What was the name of the other title? It was The Year 2020.
Yeah, The Year 2020, and then in subtitle, Now Oil the Joints of My Hand, at that moment that there is no love.
There's some typos in here, but we'll know what I mean. Oil the joints of my hand, now that there is no love.
Yeah, at that moment that there is no love.
Oh my, at that moment
that there is no love.
There, I have some horrible typing in here that we can all enjoy. So if we could please pick the title that we would like, I will get it to the printing press. Here are the responses. And I guess option number 2 has been selected, although they're both very good. Alrighty, so are there any questions or comments? We run a little over time.
Yes, sorry about this, yeah.
Thank you very much, everyone, for sticking around. We have a comment from Adam. Next time, we could train on long didactic novel titles to generate the novel title. Yes, we could. No problem. And in fact, we're going to share this novel on NaNoGenMo, but we're also going to share the code. So if anytime you'd like to copy the code and tweak it to add in your own texts, then you can absolutely use the code. It's open source to generate your own novels. And you can do that with any code on NaNoGenMo. So just send us what you make, because that'll be fun to see. So are there any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone, for submitting and participating and for discussing. We really enjoyed ourselves.
Yeah,
I hope you did too. And we'll email you soon with the novel.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.